Damn these
Biloxi blues. It happens
every night. Every whole
I ain't
night.
never met a riverboat dealer that could ever be a friend of mine.
Nope.
The summer heat never treats me kind. It leaves trouble on my mind. So I'm bidding farewell, putting in my notice, and I'll see you at another
Sing it
time.
if you know it.
This highway does not know my name, and I don't care. No,
Nope.
I don't
Not even
care.
kind of.
Heading my way
For another place, and I got
3 good tires and a spare.
right to the hook right here.
Just a white line gypsy getting out of Mississippi with just enough gas to get there.
Low budget live, the not so live variety from the Low Budget Live Bar and Grill here in beautiful southern Middle Tennessee. Beautiful and snowy and cold. Goodness gracious, like so much of the country right now. And we are not used to it here, you bunch of low-lifers. Thank you for joining me. And if you're wondering what a low-lifer is, it's what you are. It's what you are. If you've tuned in to this program, you are a low-lifer. It's what the loyal listeners and supporters of this show and of the Traveling Circus refer to themselves as, the low-lifers. And I'm grateful for each and every one. It is cold. I have on the Muppet jacket, as my kids like to call it, the Fozzie Bear. Is it Fonzie or Fozzie? No, it's Fozzie. It was Fozzie. Fonzie was on Happy Days or whatever, right? The Fonz? I don't know. Anyways, my brain's frozen. Deer hunted this afternoon a little bit with Ryder D. This is the podcast for January the 15th, and we're setting in for Snowmageddon, guys. We are setting in for Snowmageddon. It's happening right now as I record this on Sunday evening. It is happening out there. The driveway is covered. It might be a couple days before we can get out of the Traveling Circus headquarters. We have got an estimated 6 to 8 inches of snow coming our way. We shall see. They miss it a lot around here, but it seems like this one's going to be right dead on the noggin. And then Tuesday, the high's like 13, the low's -5 or something stupid. So perfect week to kick off the Alabama Bass Trail 100s. I will make my MC debut as the official MC of the Alabama Bass Trail and Alabama Bass Trail 100s this coming Saturday. So pray for me, because unless something changes, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really cold. It's going to suck. You know, Robbie Floyd left some gigantic shoes for me to fill, and all I can think about is, you know, now I'm the voice and I'm the face of the Alabama Bass Trail for the 2024 season, and I think both of those things, including some other things, might all be frozen. Because I think it's supposed to be about 14 at takeoff, and we go live right out of the giddy for Alabama Bass Trail. But if you are wanting to watch that, the Snow Bowl, as it could turn into there on Logan Martin Lake, tune in on Alabama Bass Trail on Facebook. We'll be doing all that there. But man, is it going to be cold. You know, Miss K and crew are looking at it right now to see, you know, can they move it? Can they do this? Are they going to fish? Are they not? Blah, 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 blah. It's all kind of up in the air right now. And but a decision will be made. That is for sure this week. And man, I think I want to say this. It's kind of in theme of the entire show today is kind of the toughest job in bass fishing, in my opinion, in tournament bass fishing. And that is tournament director, tournament organization leader. And look, I throw daggers on this show a lot at people that make terrible decisions and different things, but being the tournament director, being the person that has to decide, okay, are we going fishing in this weather? Are we, you know, going to disqualify this angler? Are we going to do X, Y, Z? Are we going to make this rule change? It's tough, man. It is very tough. And already it's so funny being with Kay in the Alabama Bass Trail, just the number of people that have reached out to me like, dude, are we fishing in this cold? Are we fishing? Just numbers and numbers and numbers of folks that have reached out to me. And I'm like, hey, dude with the microphone, I don't know. I don't make that decision. But being behind the scenes and and talking with Kay and her awesome team there, John, Daniel, the whole crew. The crazy thing is, and she's kind of let me behind the scenes a little bit, is it's easy to say, oh, we shouldn't go, oh, we shouldn't fish. And obviously if safety's an issue, that's a different thing. But man, when you've got an entire team of so many people coming in to work an event, and you have lodging booked, and you have camera operators booked, and you have meeting spaces booked, so many things, man, it's not as simple as just, we'll just pick another Saturday, or let's do this in March, or let's do this, and the way the ABT 100s are set up, it's January, June, and November to go around all pro trails, to go around a lot of things going on, including the normal Alabama Bass Trail, just the team series, the North and the South. So this was kind of an adjacent tournament trail that she started to give pros another avenue to try to win some money, to mix it up in a team format, provide some live coverage. Very cool event. So January, June, November. What I would say is January tournaments, what do you expect, man? What do you expect? Unless you're in Florida and still you don't know, January tournaments, you sign up to fish a tournament trail, fishes January and November, you're expecting it to be freaking cold. Now, 15 and ice hanging off of your freaking nostrils is not fun at blast off. Everybody knows that, but I think they'll make the right decision for sure going forward. But what's best for everybody. But I say that to say that job is so hard because no matter the decision, even if it is best for everybody, you're going to have somebody sitting over here in the recliner bitching. You're going to have somebody, somebody's going to want to fish in the freezing cold. Somebody's going to not want to fish in the freezing cold. Somebody's going to be mad that you didn't let them know soon enough. So there's just no way to win. So in that, our guest today, we're going to get into that. Before we do, real quick, got to thank some sponsors real fast and bring a new sponsor into the show that I'm very excited about. Very excited to welcome Gill. Gill, the absolute fantastic clothing company. And we are going to have, of course, rain suits, performance wear, you name it, shorts, layering gear. I mean, beanies, gloves, shoes. There's so much to offer from Gill. I've worn their rain suits off and on for years. I've paid full retail for them many times, which you won't hear many fishermen say because we're all like this. We want it for free, right? But I have indeed. When I fished the FLW Tour, I think the first 3 years I wore Gill that I just bought there online, and they're fantastic. And they're fantastic people, and I'm so grateful that they're partnering with me and with the lowlifers. And that being said, not this week, but starting hopefully next week, we're going to have some very special, and man, I just want to say thank you to the lowlifers, but thank you to the sponsors for offering things like this. I don't take it lightly, but they are creating a special program for you, the lowlifers, to be able to buy online and receive some pretty dang special to the lowlifer unique deals. Very cool, coming very soon. So welcome Gill. Got to do a better sponsor read than that at some point, but welcome Gill to the show. Pro Guy Batteries, ProGuyBatteries.com. You can get those lithiums, you can get those AGMs, but those new lithium cranking batteries, sure are something else. You can check them out at ProGuyBatteries.com. They've got tons of accessories on there as well, in addition to the batteries. And again, just like I said with Gill, LBL10, use that code at checkout. Is going to let them know you're a low lifer and save you money on some of the best batteries in the game from folks that have been making batteries since way back in the day. And their OEM equipment on several boats, bass boats from the factory. That's a hard badge of honor to earn. Pro Guy Batteries, they do it right. Trust people that have been in the game for a very long time. ProGuyBatteries.com is where you can find those, or at your local dealer, but LBL10 is not going to work at the local dealer. Bait-Works.com. Got this new lid from the boys at Baitworks. Bait-WRX.com is your stop for online tackle. Do not hit submit on an order if you don't want it to show up at the door, because they're bringing it. If they don't have it, you don't need it. And I can tell you right now, they are the official online home of the only jig I know of that's got LBL, the logo right there on the package. That is the LOB Power Finesse Jig, available in 7 fish catching colors, and a brand spanking new one coming at the Classic that I cannot wait. I got samples on the way. They're going to have a very big booth there, Grand Lake. They'll be available there first, but you can check them out at bait-works, bait-works.com. We appreciate the folks from Baitworks. And last but not least, you can hang that imaginary banner. Express Boats, Hot Springs, Arkansas, the first ever aluminum boat to take a ride around an arena with a Bassmaster Classic trophy up on that sea deck just a few years ago. Adding to the pro staff, there are more big trophies to come to that team. There's no doubt about it with the addition of Lee Livesey this year. They have several models, though. In this crazy economy, if you're looking for a boat, you don't have to break the bank, that's for sure. Fantastic option, and you give up nothing. A 21-foot, the X21, compared to a 21-foot fiberglass bass boat can save you a lot of money. And like I said, you give up nothing. You got stability. You got a 96-inch beam. You got a Yamaha show pushing that bad boy out of the hole at blazing speeds. More tackle storage than you can shake a stick at. Don't just take my word for it. Get out to a boat show. Go crawl around. It's boat show season. Go crawl around in an Express. Look at the X19. Look at the H17s. Maybe a bay boat is in your future. Maybe you live down on the coastline. Go check them out. ExpressBoats.com. They have a dealer locator there. Express Boats, building excitement since 1966. Going to pick mine up. Not this week. The weather screwed that up. But probably next week I will have the brand new X21 with all kind of new goodies on it. And we'll be filming a video very soon on the new one. Cannot wait to get it back into the garage. All right, I want to, real quick, kind of big news popped up yesterday on his personal, all his social media, which is the best way to announce things, right? For all these anglers, in my opinion. But Dakota Ebare, freaking fish catcher. One of my favorite podcasts I did last year was with Dakota. Very young. I don't even want to say up and coming, but he's won hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 2 or 3 years. Got some big wins last year over on the MLFLW side of the fence. Bass Pro Tour angler. When the original roster came out, he was on it. Everyone just assumed that's where he was at. I've not talked to Dakota too much this offseason, to be honest. We've texted back and forth a few things about deer hunting and whatnot. I know he's made some exciting changes sponsor-wise. Made some big changes. It's been a great offseason for the young man, but he made an announcement Saturday that he is leaving the Bass Pro Tour and is jumping in the Bassmaster Open EQs. Not sure what prompted this. You know, obviously we're late in the game, man. They're fixing to start. They kick off things down at Toledo Bend, one of his lakes where he's an absolute stone cold killer. And he chose to step away. And I think that just goes to that, miscombobulation that's going on there for sure. But I've texted back and forth with Dakota a little bit about this. He's just really looking forward to trying to get to the elites, trying to make a Bassmaster Classic. And I do think that is the root of that for sure for him. But definitely a last-second decision and one he did not take lightly because he did. He made his entire career with the FLW Tour or through the Toyotas, the Costas at the time, Toyotas, FLW Tour, fished the tour when I was there, and then, goes through the invitationals and all that, BPT. The guy's done it all on that side, and he's making a big jump. So congrats to him. I hope it works out for him. Wish him the best luck. He's a solid individual and a fantastic angler, so it'll be fun keeping up to see how that goes this year. All right, another shout-out real quick to Steve Bowman, to the JM Associates crew, to Tommy Sanders. Not that they need my shout-outs, but man, if you haven't watched The Cast on FS1, it's like an ESPN 30 for 30 type thing about the history of bass fishing. And I was fortunate enough at the Express Boats Duck Camp several weeks ago to get to see the first episode. Steve Bowman shared duck blind with us there one day and was there one night, and he let us all see this first episode about Ray Scott, and it brought back so many emotions, and I learned so many things that I thought I knew a lot about the origin of the sport and whatnot. But that's, of course, it's been on 2 or 3 weeks, and I meant to, I think 2 weeks now, and I meant to address this last week, but it's on FS1. I woke up yesterday morning, I actually got to see it. They did the 80s and the 90s, and then I got to see the Bill Dance episode. Man, it's just seeing the old TNN Bassmasters, the 80s and the 90s shows, especially those 90s that I grew up with in that era. That was really where I fell in love with all of this that led me to sitting right here today. And I think that they absolutely knocked it out of the park. So if you haven't seen that, set your DVR. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but go try to see that. Bass Pro Shop sponsored. It's fantastic, man. But in light of that, I've been really nostalgic lately. And I've been just thinking about the past and just where we were. And I think things like that are very important, that the cast, that type thing, because I feel like so many of us, myself included, focus on the now, right? We focus on where the industry is now. It's what all these YouTube videos are about, all these podcasts at times, how bad it is, and this and that, and forward-facing sonar, and blah, 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 blah. And all of that is fine, right? And it's very relevant. But I think you can't forget where you've been at the same time. And so today's guest is someone that, he's a legend to me in the sport of professional bass fishing, and he's played a very significant role in a lot of ways. And he has seen the growth. He has seen the changes. He has ridden the roller coaster. He's seen some crazy things happen, and he was one of those guys that had that title that I say is the toughest one in bass fishing to hold down professionally, and that's tournament director. He was the FLW Tour tournament director for 19 seasons, I believe, is where it rang in. He retired in January of 2022, and this guy he's one of my favorite people of all time. I'm very grateful. Most of you watching this would not know anything about me if it wasn't for the tournament trail that he was running in the FLW Tour, and he was always very, very kind to me. But he reached out to me a couple weeks ago and told me he enjoyed the podcast, and I was just flattered, man. I was flattered because I consider him a friend and a damn hero of mine. And ladies and gentlemen, this is finally happening. I have been accused of sounding like this man on various podcasts. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, let's get him on the phone right now. The one and the only Bill Taylor.
Hello.
Bill Taylor, welcome to Low Budget Live. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well, sir. Thank you.
Hey, I just, in my introduction right there, I said, you are so many things to so many, but I got to say you're a legend in the sport in my eyes, and you're a hero of mine for sure. And I just, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and chatting it up with me a little bit. When we set this up, and my wife will tell you, Marissa D, I have been just beside myself, excited to do a Low Budget Live with Bill Taylor. So thank you, buddy.
Oh, heck, man. Always willing to help my old buddies out, especially you, Logan.
Well,
how you been doing?
I've been good, buddy. I'm freezing to death down here in Tennessee, but other than that, we're going to be all right. It's just...
Well, good. Yeah, we've got, actually here, we're probably got the worst to come yet. Probably over the next 3 or 4 days, down all the way through Friday into Saturday of this week. It's really supposed to be bad here. So just got our fingers crossed, no snow.
Well, I started this show by saying I feel like the theme of this show, tournament director, I think is one of the hardest positions, hardest jobs in whether you're in a club or you're at a BFL or you're the FLW Tour tournament director. It's one of the toughest jobs. But are you so glad, though, right now tonight that you don't have to make a decision on whether you're going fishing tomorrow or not in a tournament trail?
I do not miss those days at all, dude. One of the that's one of the hardest calls to make. Do I go? Do we go? Is it too foggy? Too windy? Too dangerous? Unsafe out there? Those decisions come pretty regularly, a lot more regular than most people would think.
Well, there's so much more that go into them, right? I mean, because there's so many layers to the onion. You got, not only do you have the tournament to worry about, you got co-anglers. I mean, you got pros to worry about, but you got co-anglers to worry about. You've got sometimes media people. You've got so many different variables go into those decisions, right?
Oh yeah, and you bring in your media people. You bring in the production crews. You invite guests in, and suddenly you look up at the clock, and they've got to make a decision. Somebody's going to suffer. But we make those calls based upon experience, and they're not as tough sometimes as you would think. I've had a couple of questionable ones, but for the most part, you get a feeling for it, and you listen to the grumble and the humble around, and whether the anglers are ready to go or not, and you can make a decision based on good experience, and just be aware that the worst thing could happen is for somebody to really get hurt. So that makes the decision sometimes easy.
No doubt about it. And like you said, the grumbling and the humbling, you're never going to make everybody happy.
Oh, I know it. And then, I've been pretty lucky as a tournament official. I only had, in the 22 years plus that I worked and oversaw the pro circuit at the FLW Tour, I only had to cancel a couple of days. So, been very fortunate.
And that's pretty amazing because, Bill, I don't know if you knew this or not, but FLW stood for freaking lousy weather.
Well, now, I am glad you brought that up, Luke. Fishermen love waters is what I always refer to it.
Yes.
Or, as a couple of pros said, fishermen love women.
Yes. So, hey, there's some of that going on.
No, but we can't forget that the FLW really stands for Forrest L.
No doubt about that. That's right. And
so the finest ever to hit the fishing industry. So
no doubt about it. None of us would be doing what we're doing without Forrest Wood. Most likely. Ray Scott, Forrest Wood, but there's so many. So many.
Well, not only was he big into the boat building manufacturing, but he supported the tournament anglers out there when no one else did. And, Forrest and Nida did a lot for conservation and his community and in around Flippin, Arkansas. So he's one of the greatest men I've ever known, Luke.
No doubt about it. And I was very fortunate to get to spend time around him over the years. Not a huge amount of time, but I did get to spend time with Forrest, and just he truly just almost a god amongst men when you were right there with him. But he would never claim that. But just larger than life, man. Larger than life.
Yeah. He's just you could go to dinner with Forrest Wood and you could sit and talk just like you and I would, and he could get down to anyone's level or up to anyone's level. And the great thing about Forrest, he was true in everything he did. He didn't put on, he didn't try to manufacture anything except the best product out there. And I'll tell you, he really, really loved us out there at FLW, and now Major League Fishing, of course. But one of the greatest. I said I had two daddies, and he's my second one, and he was a good one, both my dad and him both. That's
too cool. That's too cool. And you've seen it all. You and I talked a little bit about this the other day, and I said I feel like it's so important because there are lots of changes that have happened in the last several years, and whether it's the tournament trails changing themselves or technology changing like forward-facing sonar, all these things going on, but it's so important to know where we've been also. And I love this sport to my core, and I love looking back at old tournaments. Bassmaster JM Associates just did the Cast, this television show. They've been documentary series they've been putting out. It's amazing. But I was reading some things today that I don't think I realized about you, Bill. Speaking to that, you've been around. You fished the first ever the precursor to FLW. For those of you that don't know, was Operation Bass. That's what the organization was called. And you fished the first ever Operation Bass event.
I sure did. I really did, and I'm kind of proud of that fact as well. That started up in 1980. As a matter of fact, I was at Lake Okeechobee fishing an event down there, and sat at the table there with couple of gentlemen that's pretty big in the industry to this day, Hank Parker and a gentleman there by the name of Mike Whitaker. And
Wow.
we sat there and talked a little bit, and he was telling Hank about his ideas and everything. This was in the spring of '79, and it was Mike Whitaker who had the dream to build a sport and a tournament trail that took care of the weekend anglers, and that's where I first learned of it. And he wanted to know if I'd participate and be a part of it and help him out. And I said, "You're on. I like the idea. Whatever I can do to help." And it seems like that I benefited as much as anyone from the beginning and right then and right all the way through.
So where was that first ever Operation Bass? Was it on Okeechobee where they fished, or where was that first event?
No, it wasn't. Mike Whitaker was a wannabe bass angler. He was out of Normal, Illinois, and he was friends with people like Terry Brown and some of those guys around that area up there in Illinois. And he was an old football coach, and he had a dream, and he wanted to be involved in fishing, and he could see that there was room for a tournament trail out there and there wasn't any. There just wasn't. Of course, Bassmasters, and there was a few other tournament organizations that kind of tried to get into the pro aspect of it. It was a U.S. Bass at that time, an American Bass Fishing at that time. That was the bake of the tips. As a matter of fact, in those circuits is where I met people like Hank Parker and Guy Aker and some of those early guys. And it was a big demand for other events. I mean, you had to look pretty hard to find a tournament, especially here in central Kentucky and some of the states like Illinois and Indiana. And Mike was right on. And I'm glad that he was.
Unreal. And so, and I guess I'll be honest with you, I don't think I realized that as much. So the FLW, the organization that became FLW is now Major League Fishing, started as a need for a weekend tournament trail because you had Bassmasters were the pros and you had the invitationals and all that led you to the upper echelon of the Bassmaster and then the Bassmaster Classic. But Operation Bass was for the weekend guy. Oh
yeah, and and I might add, as a matter of fact, they were the first people to come out with $100,000 payback. As a matter of fact, when Red Man Chewing Tobacco got involved in 1984, that's when things really began to happen, really and truly, really started happening in the tournament fishing aspect of it. And the reason I say that is they were involved with Operation Bass, and they went ahead and started several different divisions. They went from 4 divisions in 1980 all the way up to about 11 or 12, and I may miss a number 1 or 2. But and then they once the All-American paid $100,000, they expanded and included all the areas out west. I mean, we actually did events in California and Arizona, New Mexico, and all of those. Those kind of changed due to logistics and participation and the area and geographic itself, just to spread out there. It didn't do as good as we had hoped, but now we gained anglers like Ish Monroe and Skeet and all those guys. They fished the old Red Man Tournament Trail out in California, and that's where they cut their teeth as well. And so it grew from there. As a matter of fact, professional angler Shaw Grigsby was the very first angler to win $100,000.
That's right. Angler. I was going to say Shaw won one of those early All-Americans.
Yeah, and I met Shaw that year in the BFL. Well, I'll call it a BFL. It was still just the Red Man Tournament Trail at that point in time. They were naming title, but I met him at the regional down at Lake Sinclair down in Georgia, which I don't think he actually won first place in that event, but he went on to win the All-American. So, of course, that's a long time ago. and then we'll kind of move forward a little bit.
For sure.
And it began to expand and grow, and things were good. And in 1996, I'd been working part-time for Operation Bass as just an assistant. I drove a van that carried the operation tournament equipment around. I did help with the Michigan division, the Mountain division, and the Hoosier division as a part-time job, and continuing to work full-time at UPS. And I wanted to try to help get my daughter through college, in which I did just because of that. But in 1995, I elected to give that job up. I called Charlie Evans and said, who was pretty much doing everything out there at that point in time, and I decided I was going to quit. And he said, no, don't quit. Said, I got something big getting ready to happen. He said, I want you to be a part of it. And that wasn't but a few months later, I decided I would do it. And they announced that they were going to come out with the FLW Tour.
Wow.
And so I was one of the very first people to get involved with that. And so from there, we moved on, and you see what it is today. Of course, Major League Fishing now involved and took over, and it's still a great company. I mean, I've been honored and proud to have been a part of this fishing organization.
Well, for me, just hearing that, and I did read, is it true that in the beginning, to work the inaugural season, for you to be involved with that FLW Tour, you were so excited about it, not to fish it, to work, to help them grow it, that you took PTO from UPS that first season? You took vacation.
I did. I took 7 weeks vacation just to work those events from 1996 to 2000.
Okay,
I
so
did not
for several
take
years.
a vacation other than to work an FLW Tour event.
Unbelievable.
Part-time. But, again, I got my daughter through pharmacy school, and she didn't have any loans, and so it paid off in the long run. I sacrificed a whole lot, but and I was able to fish some too along, weekend tournaments and things like that. But it worked beautiful for me.
That is so cool.
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change any of it.
That is so
not
cool.
One item.
So let me ask you this, because we had obviously you and I elected to leave the tour in 2019 there after MLF. It was, they were coming in to buy it and end up making the decision to kind of step away. And I know you, obviously, Bill, being involved with all this craziness and bass fishing's been really dramatic in the last few years. But can you remember or take us through when the FLW Tour hit? Because I was a big fan. I mean, I remember when it started being on ESPN and things like that. Was there, of course, social media didn't exist then, but was there this, was Bass very upset when that happened, right? When the FLW Tour came out, was it like, oh boy, this is serious competition? Was it tense in the industry, I guess is what I'm getting at, like we've seen the last few years?
Well, I don't think necessarily as much tension at that point in time as it has become here in the last little bit, for whatever reason. But, there was some, conflicts between scheduling. Some organizations, and I'll speak specifically of FLW, I wanted to be able to work around the schedules to where both organizations, both the pros could fish both organizations. And that worked for a little bit, worked just fine for a little bit. But then, scheduling become pretty complicated as everyone grew in that sport. And things really took off, in the 2003 and 4 in that area. It was Walmart involved, and all the wrap boats beginning to really catch on, and sponsorship dollars were flowing freely through both organizations. And I think more than anything, Luke, that the time was that the sport was going great, and I think they considered each other individualists, and they just went their own direction for the most part at that point in time.
And you did back there, like you said, you had guys truly fishing both. I mean, anybody from Kevin Van Dam to Denny Brower to Rick Clunn, they were, they were mixing and matching. They were fishing as much as they could get their hands on back then.
Oh yeah, they did, and they continued to do that as long as they could.
Right.
I tell you, we lost a lot of good FLW pros that went with Bass. And we gained some from Bassmasters. they had to make a decision, and certainly both companies, and I can't speak for Bassmasters, but I'll speak for the FLW. We tried to keep as many on our side as we could from leaving, and we tried to get as many of those as we could get. Of course, Bassmaster being the company they were and still are, it was hard for those guys to leave. Some of them made a hard choice. They had a bad time trying to make their decisions, but
No doubt.
It worked out for a lot of them, and a lot of them eventually went back to bass, and a lot of bass stayed with the FLW.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny to think about all the flipping and flopping that's going on over the years, and you think about a guy like it because we've seen it in the last few years, obviously, but I think that's why it's so important to talk about the history, because that's happened a lot over the years. I think about a guy like Larry Nixon, who was the first $1 million winner in bass, but man, in the last however many years, his career was with FLW. I mean, he was an FLW only guy until he went back to the elites there to kind of wrap up his career.
Well, and George Cochran was another one of those guys. But, there's so many there that I had so much respect for. And I think as a highlight of my career was working with people like Kevin Van Dam and Larry Nixon. And I mentioned Shaw Grigsby earlier. Just all the pros out there that just caught everybody's eyes back in the 80s and 90s. I was able to work with those guys. And I'll tell you, as Forrest Wood always said, fishermen are good people, and there's a lot of good professionals out there. And I mean, not just because they're good anglers, but because they're really good people.
I agree. It's a very small sport that we've got for the most part. It's a tiny industry, but we're fortunate to be in it. That's for sure.
It is. I always tell everybody, and I've heard you say this, better not burn that bridge. Sooner or later, that bridge is going to need you to cross it again.
Now, Bill, I have burned a couple in my day. Now, you know that about me a little bit.
I'm sure I have as well. I tell you, I try to keep my nose clean, but sometimes, it's kind of hard.
Sometimes it just gets away from me, Bill.
I really got a lot of respect for people that does stand up for what they really believe in and everything. And I stood up for myself and for our company, and I fought for things that I didn't get and internally, and I won some battles and I lost some. But my attitude always was, if the company's paying me to do my job, I'll do what they ask me to do. So I got over it pretty quickly.
Well, I think that's something that, a tip of my hat to you, like you said, though, fighting for things. I think it goes unnoticed. Maybe, I mean, people that know you personally know how much you love just fishing. You just love catching a bass. Like you love, and I miss more than anything that I miss about the FLW Tour. I miss being at the weigh-in tanks and you coming by and giving everybody a hard time about not catching them, and looking at the bags of the folks. You were always just looking at the fish before weigh-in, and you would think, some tournament directors are real buttoned up and maybe they're not interacting with the anglers like that. But man, you were always one of the first people that I would see when I would come in, and but you would fight for the anglers because you were an angler. You were an angler. You still are an angler, and I think that when you say that, you always had tournament fishermen. You had the business. I know you had to make decisions for, but you had tournament fishermen in the forefront of your mind.
Well, I always tried to. I always said this, Luke. As a tournament organizer and an organization, I don't care who it is. If it's a tournament group that just gets together every weekend to have a local tournament, listen to what the anglers want. Try to do the things that they want within your organization. However, there's things financially and business-wise that they can't make happen, and you got to understand, as long as they're got a program out there that's for and list that program and tell everybody what they've got to offer, and they continue to go ahead and give those people what they say they will give them, then more power to them. If they don't do to suit you, then there's always someone out there in another organization that's willing to accept you and bring you in and try to do the same thing. But the main thing is to treat everybody equally as anglers and in enforcement of the rules. And as a business, you can't make the enemies with your anglers. If you do, you're in trouble.
Yeah, that it's and it, like we said in the beginning of this, it's hard to please everybody. You're not ever going to make everybody happy. There are a lot of tough decisions that have to be made, but it is you have to look at it, as everybody is equal for sure. As you
I
go.
can remember Kathy Fennell working directly under her. Her number one objective at every event was to make sure that everyone, whether it's the BFL, college, high school, FLW Tour, Toyota Series, it didn't matter. You wanted those anglers to leave with a great experience and give them the best product you had. And she was a leader in that, and I think that's one reason we were so successful with numbers and the people that went from the BFL all the way to the top level that's right there today. I don't know. It amazes me to look at those names and see who all started at the BFL level with us, and I continue to follow every one of them I can.
Even James Watson. Do you still follow? Do you still follow Watson? Or are you glad to get rid of Watson? Come on, you can tell me the truth.
What now?
I said, do you still follow James Watson? Or are you glad to not have to deal with him anymore?
I follow James Watson. I promise I do. I'll tell you, I really.
I got to give him a hard time.
I'll tell you, I'm proud to say that since live streaming on with the Low Budget Live and people like you, Luke, it's really built my interest. I've got time to sit and listen to the podcast and listen to the
That's
anglers
awesome.
and watch their websites and their following. I really enjoy that. I really do.
That's
Sometimes
awesome.
I get a little bit frustrated with some of them
Sure.
beliefs. But I tell you, I give an angler credit. If they're good and professional, I give them credit for it, and I love to watch them, and I follow them. I mean, I've got some favorites now that I never was able to show.
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite right now in the sport? Right now to follow. You're sitting at home. It's cold. You're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram. Who's your favorite pro right now? I'm gonna put you on the spot, Bill Taylor.
Well, I've said it a few times, and I'm gonna say it again. Kevin Van Dam.
Okay, yeah.
Even though he
It's
retired, he's and I've always said too that I wanted to be more like Andy Morgan than any angler that I ever followed.
Same.
I watched him, 16-year-old, beat me like a drum, but now he's always been the same since he's 16-year-old. He hasn't changed a bit. All he wants to do is fish and hunt, catch fish, and smile and be good with people. You never hear a bad word from him. Whatever program you got out there, he said, "Okay, boys, let's go fishing. Just tell me what time to start and where we're going to start."
That's right. How many we're bringing back?
Yeah,
that's it. How big they got to be?
Well, he was born with 13 pounds in the sack.
I told him that one time. I said, but Bill, 13 pounds turned into like 17 at some point in bass fishing too, And I used to tell Andy that. Yeah, that's right.
The scopers. Well, I don't remember who it was, but I think it's Andy that said, "If you're not scoping, you're hoping."
That's right. That's right.
But you know what? You mentioned something there. I can remember when a 15-pound stringer was big.
Yeah, yeah.
I've won many a tournament with 13 or 14 pounds. Now, even in these local tournaments, and I know you fish a bunch of them as well. Hey, you better leave them little 15-inch fish alone.
That's right. And, it's crazy.
You better have an idea how to catch some big fish, because if you don't, you're going to go home empty-handed with no money in your pocket.
It's such a testament to organizations like FLW and like Bass with the catch and release and all that starting when it did, and just taking care of the resource, because right now today, and yeah, there are a lot more people in the water, and can fisheries be tougher? Yes. But 5 fish weights right now, some of the weights you see, there was a tournament on Gunnersville on New Year's Day. It took 32, almost 33 to win. 29, almost 30, high 29s was second. 28 was third. And people with 26s and 27s and 25s didn't even get an attaboy. And I had several buddies that had between 22 and 24, and you just threw them back. I mean, that's just incredible to think about.
I know it. When I first started working the old Red Man Tournament Trail in Michigan, 15 pound was a big stringer. St.
Yeah.
Clair, I mean,
Crazy.
and obviously, some of the guys, that had learned to go out on Lake Erie up there, and this and that and the other, they began to bring some 16 to 18 pound stringers in. Now, again, like you said, if you don't have over the 20 pound mark, man, and I'll tell you, that's a testament not only to the anglers getting better,
yes,
technology getting better, and equipment getting better, but I've always give a high five to a lot of the fisheries departments. Sometimes they don't get enough credit either, but I've worked with them from Michigan to California and to Florida, and there's a lot of good organizations that truly wants to grow the sport and make it better for everybody. So
no
we
doubt.
don't give those guys sometimes enough credit.
I agree with that, and that's a big job to manage all those fisheries and to put different regulations on at different times, whether it's slot limits or what have you, or restocking programs or stocking bait fish.
Yeah, I remember, Luke, when I first started. Most fisheries people, they had they had a stand back about their thought process that concerned tournaments. They didn't know, tournament fishing was really new to the wildlife people and agencies across the country, and they just took a bipartisan stance. But now they're heavily involved with tournament fishing. They want it. They love it. They want to create more anglers out there and more people fishing. They love the idea of the high school piece of the puzzle. They'd like to see more ladies get involved, and so would I, and so would you and everybody else.
For sure.
Because that's a sport that they can fish and have fun and do it with their partners and their husbands and wives and the whole 9 yards. So, sometimes we don't give our fisheries people enough credit.
I agree with that, and one stat that I remember seeing, back in the 90s, I can remember my dad beating this in my head when we fished a club back when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and it was, boy, if you catch 10 pounds a day every time you go bass fishing, you'll win Angler of the Year. And now, if you catch 10 pounds, you're going to be flipping burgers.
Hey, I'll tell you, I told somebody out there at the FLW office, we had a meeting one day there, and we were all sitting around talking about fishing and everything. And I'd went up to Lake Cumberland, even though I was living there in Western Kentucky, and I just continued to fish. I said they used to, when I'd show up to fish a tournament on Cumberland, they'd just snarl and do all that. Now they laugh at me when I show up to one over there. They treat me like I used to treat them. But that's a testament, again, to our high school anglers and college anglers learning at an early age.
No doubt.
And they're getting better.
They're getting a lot better.
I got a little nephew that's named Clay Bales. That you put that down your little book, because this kid right here, he's a senior in high school this year, and he'll be fishing college next year. But I put him up against a lot of really heavy hitters, especially in this area right now. He can do it. And
really?
Actually won a tournament down at Lake Hartwell here not long ago. So
okay. Clay Bale.
Now there's a lot of, and I tell you, there's just so many good fishermen out there. The one thing that bothered me just a little bit, and I want to say this in a positive manner, but I know that sometimes people don't think it might be positive. But whenever they changed the pro circuit, the FLW Tour, to the invitationals, it didn't seem like those guys were treated like pros. But I want to tell you, those guys in that FLW Invitational, Major League Fishing Invitationals now, and I apologize for not being able to remember to say Major League Fishing right now, but there's a lot of true professionals that fish the FLW Tour and these invitationals. I'd like to see those guys still be referred to as professional anglers.
I agree. Yeah, and I have talked on here, I did think that when we took the tour away, and I've talked about it a lot, it broke my heart. It was the FLW Tour, man. It was a big deal. It was the Elite Series. It was the FLW Tour. That was a personal thing for me for when that happened. But those guys are they're stone cold fish catchers. It's the feeder for the Bass Pro Tour, and you know it better than anybody. Those guys will beat your teeth in. over
yes.
there, for sure. But the thing that got me the most about the change, though, and I got this in my notes because I want to ask you, I missed the Forest Wood Cup. I think the Cup was one of the greatest. Yeah. Obviously, being named after Forest is just such and I know it changed to FLW Cup towards the end there, but the Forest Wood Cup was one of the greatest events in this sport, and I really do fear that kids 10 years from now won't even, they won't know that it existed and how hard of a tournament it was to win because of the time of year and the competition. But do you have a favorite Forest Wood Cup, either a favorite cup or a favorite cup memory from all the years?
Well, I've got a lot of great memories of the Forest Wood Cup. They were great. And I tell you, it really hurt me in the early years of the Forest Wood Cup events. And I'm going to refer back to the Forest Wood Cup all the way back to 2002 or so, like that, leading right on up. And I would watch Bassmaster in the Classic draw thousands. And we fought to get hundreds in the stands at the beginning. But on the end, I'll call the last 6 or 8 Forest Wood Cups unbelievable
huge
events.
Yes.
Like you said, it was a tough event. We always went in August. Some of the toughest fishing out there. Anywhere in the United States you wanted to go except maybe the Great Lakes area. But we began to fill the arenas. We began to really get some momentum going with crowd. We had made a lot of anglers wealthy.
Yes.
We're first to pay $1 million prize, the first to pay $500,000 to the winner of the Forest Wood Cup. We allowed the anglers to go from requiring them to use our equipment to allowing them to use their own equipment. And you know how hard it is to change boats overnight.
Oh, yeah.
A strange boat. I can't do it personally. I couldn't even run a trolling motor of the same type on someone else's boat versus mine because it don't feel the same.
That's right.
But anyhow, the Forest Wood Cup, I can just see Forrest and Nina sitting there with smiles on their face and Forrest walking across the stage, and it brought tears to my eyes every event. But I think the most memorial one was when I watched Scott Suggs win $1 million in the Forest Wood Cup, without a question.
That's awesome. I remember watching that weigh-in live, and I didn't know Scott like I do now, and I consider him a dear friend. Thanks to the FLW Tour and we roomed together for a couple years there, but I can remember watching that and truly just being emotional. Watching that happen, just, here's this guy just won $1 million on his home lake, front of his friends and family, a lake he cut his teeth on. It was just all of it combined, not just the money. It was just such a historic and incredible moment in the sport.
Oh, there's no question. And I also remember a gentleman by the name of Luke Duncan doing very well in one of the Forest Wood Cups.
I had a pretty good one.
Really, I think you'll agree that's kind of one that escalated your career.
Yeah, well,
right to this minute.
That same year, I won on Beaver Lake there that year, and got to the Cup, and had I not blown it the second day, I might have won that stinking thing. I had a couple miscues on that final day, but it's Bill. I got to tell you this. One of my best friends. There's a picture. So when I won Beaver that year, you brought me up and we did the deal, and I barely won. I edged out Todd Lee, greatest co-angler of all time.
Oh, man. And a great person.
Great person, good friend, and to us both. And I was able to beat Todd there, and you, the funniest thing, there's a picture, and a buddy of mine, he was watching it live, and he screen grabbed it on his computer, and he sends it to me. He will send it to me listening to this podcast this week, 1,000,000%. Text will hit my phone, and it's me. You were interviewing me. You said something, and then somebody got your attention, and I'm standing on stage, and I've got the big cardboard check and the microphone. You handed me the microphone, and he got the perfect shot of me, and he always likes to give me crap and say, "You remember that time you stole the microphone from Bill?" And he'll say it this week. It'll happen, but I've got that picture saved. But I'll see if I can post it on this episode for people to see. I'll dig through my phone and find it. But he always says, "Hey man, remember that time you took the mic from Bill?"
Yeah, I remember that one. But I tell you, you're talking about Beaver Lake and your win out there. Some of my biggest memories as a tournament official was working events at the home of Walmart.
Yes.
Involved with Walmart operations. And our anglers hated it the first couple of times we went out there.
Yeah.
But I want to say this. It made our anglers much, much better fishermen by going out there, fishing a tough fishery, learning how to use the old shaky head, light tackle, learning how to fish for sight fish. A lot of guys learned to sight fish on Beaver Lake.
No doubt.
And it really, really began to, everyone loved it. And then we always had the Children Miracle Network event following that. And the pros would stay over, and we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars every year for the Miracle Network. And I'm proud to say that I was a part of that. And that was some of my biggest memories ever, was right there at Walmart. And those, as a matter of fact, I was invited to one of the Walmart corporate meetings, and we attended those at times. We went into conferences over there with them. And so here's an old country boy out of Kentucky that's in there with some pretty big heavy hitters at Walmart, and it's quite an honor to be able to have done that.
That's
quite
an
honor to sit at the state of Georgia with the governor and say, "Yep, we can bring you this event. It's going to bring in $10 million to the area," and then me say, "Well, I think I have an accent, but I'm sorry, Governor. I believe yours is even worse than mine." and him shake my hand. Those memories
awesome.
right there, you just can't. You can't replace them. So.
No, not. And you said beaver, and of course for me, Beaver Lake will always be one of the most special fisheries in this country, just because I'll never forget. And I've never really talked about that on the show, but I'll never forget. I had a lot going on in life at that time. I was 2 or 3 years removed from divorce, and that $20,000 I won there made so much of a difference to my family. It really did. But my family wasn't able to make it. Because you don't know, on the co-angler side, I was like 16th, 17th the first day. And I told Strader, though, I said, with the partner I'd drawn and what I'd figured out on day one, I said, "Dude, I think I'm going to win." I told him that morning. I said, "I've got a really weird feeling." And man, it was such a fantastic day on the water and just to narrowly edge out Todd. But I remember, just the emotion of that day, because none of my friends and family from home got to be there, but they got to watch it through FLW Live. And man, my phone just ringing off the hook, and driving back that next day from out there back to Tennessee was one of the most emotional rides, just because I've been after fishing so long, and that was the first big win, and just and I'd been out of fishing for a couple years there too, and back into it, and was hoping to make the tour, which I did. And anyways, that'll always be special for me. But I think it frustrates me that no tournament trails go to Beaver anymore. Once FLW stopped going, nobody goes. It's such a cool place.
I know it. I know that. And you guys were always well welcomed over there.
Yes.
People loved it
yes.
when they come into town over there. And, there was a lot of history on Beaver
For
Lake.
sure, yes, of course.
Tackle manufacturers right there. And then the beginning of the Walmart store, the first one. And Beaver Lake being one of the first Bassmaster destinations.
Ray Scott's first ever.
Ray
Scott.
Scott. Boy, by the way, you mentioned a few minutes ago, I've got to say that, man, JM Associates, bless Mike's heart. That's a great
unreal, right?
Production right there. Oh, hey, you know what I love about it? People don't understand this, Luke. Did you notice that back in the 70s, the beginnings, the tow vehicle, if you had a station wagon car, you had the tow vehicle of the century.
You were uptown.
That vehicle, yeah. People didn't have pickup trucks. They had cars, and showing those just brought back so many memories.
those first classics, just you saying that, some of the footage, I just think about that first surprise one he had at Lake Mead, and they had to get all those boats out there to Lake Mead. No, it's crazy. Like, all that's so wild. Charter an airplane. They don't know where they're going. I mean, to think about what we think we're uptown now. We think everything's just so advanced. And I'm like, no, we're not.
Can you imagine putting Jimmy Houston on that airplane?
No, I can't believe they let him get on one.
But, you know, those things, my goodness. You know, I dabbled a little bit in the Bassmasters.
Yeah.
And glad that I did. As a matter of fact, I broke in about the same time there and fished a lot of the events. My highest finish ever in a Bassmaster tournament was at Toledo Bend, and I moneyed there with a 9th place, I believe it was. And I think Logan Martin won it there. And then I met Guido up at Lake of the Ozarks. I moneyed there. I fished with Tommy Martin there. One of the finest men I ever put in a boat with to this day, Tommy Martin. I also was able to really, really, really get to sit and talk to Larry Nixon. That's where we became friends. Now, we're talking 1982, 3, or maybe 84. And I had to make a decision as to whether I wanted to stay bass fishing as a professional or keep working at UPS. And I'll never forget it. I asked Hank what I needed to do. He said, I'll tell you what you better do. You better learn how to fish before you become a pro. Stay at UPS and you'll make some money. So I told Hank, I said, that's the best advice I ever had from anyone. So,
Hank Parker said you better learn how to fish, boy.
Well, yeah.
If you're going to stick around with him.
I got the best of Hank. UK and Duke were playing in the national championship game, and we were at Seminole in a little old motel room down there, and we were watching the Kentucky Wildcats beat Duke, and I got him on that one. Hank was always great to me, and he's still one of the greatest anglers out there.
No doubt.
Off the sport. But,
great human, too.
He told me that.
That's
he also
so funny.
Told me the reason you never do lose any big fish is because you never get a hold of any. He was worse than James Watson when he get to ride you a little bit.
That's amazing. That reminds me, I had a buddy of mine, Jerry Lawler, dear friend of mine. Jerry fished FLW Tour with us a couple years, but Jerry was the one. I got to tell this on him just real quick. This is not what I was not the story I was fixing to tell, but at Wheeler, he was the only person I knew in a tough tournament. Mark Rose won an FLW series there, and Jerry would have finished either second or third, but he brought in 6 fish, and he had to have a difficult conversation with Mr. Bill Taylor, and he ended up finishing 10th there.
Yeah. Well, you know, Russ Moran from over the Nashville area.
Yep.
I finally, once Charlie Evans left, I finally got a rule change that I'm so proud of. Kathy Fennell listened to me on this one. The 6 fish limit. The 5 fish limit, if you got 6 fish in the boat, you're disqualified to catch for that day.
Yeah.
And I finally got that changed to where it was a penalty of 2 pounds, and you had to discard back down and keep only 5 fish. That was one of my proudest moments. Yeah. The second proudest moment of that was when we allowed a co-angler, or later on without the co-angler in the boat, but we allowed one of them to stay with the boat in a breakdown situation without penalty and ride in. One of the anglers would take the fish in. I mean, it was pitiful to have to leave a boat sitting out there. Back then, I said, well, shoot, there's $30,000 worth of equipment sitting out there. Now it's $130,000.
That's right. The electronics are $30,000, if not more.
I know. But that was 2 little rules right there that I was proud that I really
that's awesome.
For and got it. But
and now those are just commonplace now. You know what I mean? I didn't know when those came to be, but that's interesting. No, my buddy Lawler, you're telling that about Hank giving you a hard time. He drew Chet Douthit. You remember Chet Douthit?
Uh-huh. Oh,
he drew
Chet. Well.
He drew Chet though in an Everstart, and you're talking about Hank's advice. So Jerry had this miserable tournament at Santee Cooper. He draws Chet boat on boat last day, and Chet was his hero, man. Chet was big time pro, and he was in the boat with Chet, and he said that Chet goes. At the end of the day, Jerry had zeroed, and Chet had caught him pretty good, and he said they're getting his stuff out of the boat. And he says, man, you got any advice for me, Mr. Douthit? And he said, I do. He said, go home for a few days. Just put all your stuff over in the corner. Okay. He said, just take a break for a few days. He goes, okay, then what? He goes, then sell every bit of it because you're a terrible fisherman. You don't need to do this anymore.
I kind of know how that's. I know the meaning of that. That's kind of the way Hank did me.
That's right. That's why. Yeah, that's what I hadn't thought about that story in a long time. When you said Hank told you better learn to fish if you're going to be a pro, that that tickled me to death, man. That's so good. So good.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something there, and it's always been an issue. But back in the day, it's boat on boat draw. That's how we learned how Jimmy Houston fished. That's how we learned that Hank Parker was a spinnerbait king. Or that's how we learned that Guido Hibnan how to sight fish. And those guys grew each other, and they become great, great, great friends. And that's kind of gone away now. I don't know. I know that there's little groups of guys that kind of friend each other and they work a little bit together. But back whenever I was really heavily involved in fishing and fishing tournaments, I mean, it was boat on boat. You took it, you flipped the coin. Most of the time, it worked out for both anglers. And even to this day in the BFL, and, the co-anglers not being allowed to fish in the pro tours and things like that, they've kind of been slighted a little bit. And I hate to say that in a negative way, because they were the backbone of the sport. They're the ones that come up and start making pros, and Brian Thrifts of the world and people like that.
Brian New, Andy Montgomery, Anthony Gagliardi, Scott Martin.
Anthony Gagliardi, all of them.
A lot of them. Scotty Martin himself started that way.
Oh, well, I know it.
Yeah, he was Mr. Lando Lake's butter co-angler.
Yeah.
For a minute.
You mentioned something there. I remember, and this was before you actually got going. When we first come out with the sponsor boats like Land O'Lakes, Fujifilm, well, they were boats that were manufactured in their colors. And so a green chartreuse boat, if one of the pro anglers drew out and I assigned the Fuji boat to them, they panicked because they thought that a chartreuse boat would scare the fish off.
Really?
Yes, really.
No
They'd
kidding.
say, well, the Land of the Lake boat's pretty. It's bright yellow, but now can you give me a Kellogg's boat? It's got a black bottom on it. I want to put that out there because they found out later on, they didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But at first they did.
And that's and you're going back to those days when all it was really the first where the Irwin days where things were made like NASCAR, and they fished out of if you're not familiar, the guys on the cut days would fish out of FLW boats, but before boat wraps, these boats were actually manufactured in those colors. Ranger would have green ones and yellow ones and bright red, and then they would just have decals on them.
Yeah, there's still a few of them floating around, but we had to send them to Japan. The Japanese anglers over there, we ship them to Japan, and they loved them.
That's what I always heard. They went to Japan.
Yeah.
And the bright colors, amazing.
It's funny. We talk about evolving with the electronics and the boats, and when they went to all the wrapped boats and trucks, I remember working with motorsports, and I was assigned at first to check with the wraps to see if we can get some trailers wrapped and what they'd cost to wrap the boats. And one of the heavy hitters with NASCAR was Motorsports Incorporated, and I called them, and they just flat said, we got more we can do here at Motorsports. I mean, in the race car business, said we got too much going on here for that. And later on, they were begging for our business. And so,
wow.
And so, that's become a big business.
It has
out of that. Yeah. So I wanted to run that out there.
And all started with the FLW Tour. Wrap boats started with the FLW Tour, period.
Yes, it did. Sure did.
Yep.
The jerseys.
Yes.
The jerseys, and it's funny. It's funny. We got pros that fought against having to wear I'll just call it and refer to it as Kellogg's or Castro. They didn't want to do that. And now, that's still back.
Yeah, it's back. I said that it was funny when MLF, the TV show, first came out. You know, they very much adopted that similar. You fished out of their boats with their jerseys long before Bass Pro Tour was a thing, or they had a tournament organization. You know, it was just a television show, and I laughed because I can remember the uproar whenever FLW and Bass said, "Okay, well, we're gonna fish for this big money, but you got to fish out of our boat." And you got to wear this jersey. And I remember how mad the pros were. And I chuckled whenever the MLF stuff first came about, because I said, well, now you're just doing the same thing you were mad about years ago.
Well, but I think those anglers learned.
I think so.
I want to make a point right here, and I want all the listeners to understand this. I want to give Irwin Jacobs a little credit here, where credit's due. And I say that by saying, he owned Ranger. He bought Ranger Boat Company, and he wanted to promote Ranger boats. And his idea was to start the FLW Tour, to create a platform with bonus dollars paid if you run a Ranger, and entry into the events with a priority if you run Rangers. And, he took that boat company, and I think a lot of people agree that they had probably 60 or 70% of the bass boat business.
For sure.
Right on up. Of course, that kind of went away, whenever he thought he could do the same thing in the saltwater business. And it took a lot of money to start those projects up. As a company, we didn't understand how to operate a kingfish tournament or a redfish tournament. Now, the walleye circuits that we started, and with the idea of utilizing his brand of the Lund boats and the crest liners and the aluminum trade along with Ranger, it was pretty successful. Not as successful as the bass tournaments, but they were events that were a little bit easier for our staff to know how to run, and our company to know the ins and outs of those. But we wasted a lot of time and effort and money, I must admit, in trying to promote Wellcraft and some of those yacht companies. And
it didn't translate, right?
No, it did not.
Yeah.
All they wanted to do is they could take a boatload of liquor out and get drunk and have
That's
a good time. That's what they wanted to do. But again, there was a market there for the redfish. I wish we'd stayed in the redfish.
I do too.
Market.
I love redfish
really
tournaments.
Do.
Yeah.
But with that being said, and I know you formerly worked at TH Marine, and you were involved in a lot of other pieces in the puzzle of the industry. That helped those that helped those companies big
for
time
sure
with by promoting the tournaments the way Irwin did. And I think FLW was instrumental in a lot of that, and I want to give Bassmasters credit. I think they're still a great organization along with Major League Fishing. I just hope and pray that it continues like it has in the past. The lakes get more crowded every day, and there's more happening out there. The sponsor dollars are fewer right now.
For sure.
I just wish the anglers understood the business aspect of being able, instead of charging $350,000 a year for a sponsorship, they're lucky if they can get $75,000. Some of these organizations are. And I don't know what they're getting now, but I know that it's not anything of what it was in the early 2000s.
No doubt about that.
All the way up to about 2013 or 14.
Do you think we'll ever see $1 million first place again?
Yeah, I hope so.
I do too. I hope so.
I really do. I think that I said this, and it was almost a done deal one time. I would like to see the best of the Bassmasters and the best of the Major League Fishing have a qualifiers that allowed them to move on a one-on-one, fish against everybody. All anglers, say 25 from Bassmasters, 25 from Major League Fishing, fish for whoever, but fish for the individuals, and just see who comes out on top and who would win and who would handle it the right way. And it's kind of like going the Super Bowl, except there are two different groups there, I guess. And I'm not an expert on some of this, but I just like to see it come to a time where it was a one-on-one to the best of the best, two organizations in the world. Because let's face it, man. those are two good organizations, and there's a way to create a lot of interest somehow. And I'm certainly not capable of coming up with those ideas, and it takes a genius to figure things like that out financially. And with the right sponsorship dollars, though, it could happen.
It definitely could.
You know,
Bill, if I have you on, and I've kept you for a long time, and I appreciate your time. If I've got Bill Taylor on Low Budget Live, I have one question I have to ask, and I know you're going to say, Luke Duncan, I know exactly what's coming, but I got to say it because this is a single. You were involved. You were the guy. And maybe there was a crazier week of your life or a crazier story. And I know there are probably legalities and different things that come with this, but was there ever anything crazier than the Tony Christian situation? I have to say that to you on Low Budget Live because I feel like it's the craziest thing that ever happened in this sport.
Well, yeah, no, you're right, and it was crazy.
It was crazy.
Would never, ever, ever believe how hard it was to catch the guy.
Really?
We put a detective in a boat. I called him up and said, "Hey, look, we want to do a special on you. So we want to put a camera in your boat during practice and during the event, and we just trying to find out if this guy. And I'm not going to call his name.
Yeah.
His name, certainly, but we did have a pro out there, a fisherman that was winning everything he fished.
Everything, yeah.
Everything, big bass, the whole 9 yards. And we figured it out. The detective could not even figure it out. But
really, so, and you don't have to go into details as far as what he was doing because you don't want copycats or anything like that. Yeah,
details for what he was doing because it would open up things that people wouldn't believe how easy it was for him to do this.
No way.
He got by with it, and I'm not going to say how it was.
So did but you're saying the detective actually didn't catch him?
He did not.
You guys did.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
And I will say this, and I've heard a lot of things about, just recently about not divulging certain rule violations and all that. My thought process is, and it was then, the same as it is now, is I wanted to put this one gentleman in jail, but I was instructed to not.
Really?
And so with that being said, I'll say no more.
Okay.
Now, I will say this. There's been several people banned from our organization for whatever rule violation that required that. There's anglers that's fished Bassmasters. There's anglers that's been banned from the FLW brands that we've caught cheating. And I want to say there's a difference in just plain old calling an angler a cheater versus a rules violator.
Right.
Most rule violations are strictly accidental.
Unintentional, yeah.
Unintentional. They didn't mean to fish in a no wake or in an off limits area. They didn't realize the signs weren't in where they were, or they were running a no wake zone for 200 yards before they realized it. There's a difference in a rule violation and a cheating procedure.
For sure.
And every rule needs to have. It'd be simple to say, well, if you violated the life vest rule, you need to be disqualified for that day. Well, what if Luke Duncan took off and maybe went 15 or 20 yards, and all of a sudden he stops and realizes that, hey, I forgot to put my life vest on. And then he picks up the phone and calls Bill Taylor or that particular tournament director and says, what do I need to do? Well, you don't disqualify someone like that. Now, if that same Luke Duncan decides, hey, I got to get out of here, let's go, I see Logan Martin coming down the lake and he's going to get my spot, and he puts the hammer down and runs a mile up the lake and don't put his life vest on, now that's a disqualification for that particular day. So all rules need to be to where common sense is involved in what type of violation it is. Now, at FLW, whenever I was there, and Kathy Fennell and Dave Washburn, and Dave Washburn doesn't get enough credit within this industry. Dave is phenomenal. So I wanted to make sure that I tell the folks out there listening that Dave Washburn has done a lot at FLW. Been there for years. He's done it all. He's very important. But what we always tried to do is when we had a rule violation, we recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
We wrote it down, and we wanted to always be consistent. What did we do if we got word that so-and-so in practice moved from one spot to the other? What we tried to do is, what did we do to Luke Duncan? He violated a no wake zone, or he did this. What did we do to him? And then when Bill Taylor done the same thing, well, what did we do to Luke? We penalized Bill the same way. We gave him a 2-pound penalty. We gave him a disqualification on that, or whatever we did. We were consistent. Kathy Fennell made sure, and Bill Taylor made sure that we were consistent with how we handled every rules violation. And then we never changed the rules during the season. We always made sure that once we had a rule in question of how to handle that rule, that we debated that top to bottom for hours before we printed them for the next year. And so it's a very hard thing to make everybody happy with rule enforcement. But the bottom line is you've got to be consistent with how you handle that.
That's what I'm going to end with today on those rules. I love this because I had this in my notes. I'm glad you said that. And first of all, I want to say before we go to this, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I want to thank you for always being who you've been to me, which is somebody I consider a friend. Like I said, a legend, a hero. You've been more than kind to me over the years, and I greatly appreciate it. But I want to ask this. So rule changes normally happen when there's an oversight, or I don't want to say a gray area, but something. I've joked with Scott Martin over there. There's been Scott Martin rules. There were Roland Martin rules. There were Kevin Van Dam rules that I've heard Trip Weldon call a couple of them the Gerald Swindle rule because something happened.
We did. We referred to that.
Right. And so, but I want to say, who was the toughest pro in your mind that I don't want to say walked the line, but that pushed you as a tournament director the hardest? Do you have one of those that kind of that was like, all right, he's keeping us on our game, not from a cheating standpoint, but he's keeping us on our toes because he knows the rules better than we do? You know what I mean?
Well,
do you have one of those in your career?
I got multiple ones.
Multiple. Okay.
Ever who's catching fish and are doing very well, fishing, catching, winning money consistently. There's only one that I never had any issues at all out of that did that and went through a good hot streak, and that's Brian Thrill.
Okay.
Never a question. There was, I'm not going to call any names, Luke.
No,
I will say
there
was about 4 to 5 that.
I think we lost Bill. Try to get him back here to end it. The call dumped. Hang on just a second. Low budget live. Not so live, but very live. We'll see if I can get him back. His phone might have died. Hey, Bill, I dropped you there, and you were saying you had 4 to 5 that pushed you.
Yeah, well, it'd be 4 to 5 of them because they were excelling at the sport. They were catching plenty of fish. And they were people who watched and I told every one of them, I'd say the same thing to all of them. I said it to Dakota Ebare. When you're hot, and every eye in the sport is on you. You got to do it the right way. They try to pick places and accuse you of doing this and accuse you of doing that. But the polygraphers that we did, I polygraphed some of these, about 4 or 5 of them more than anybody. I'd rather not call any names.
No, I get that.
I'm not going to.
Absolutely.
But some of the best anglers we've got right now are ones that got accused of pulling shady deals. As a matter of fact, I was accused by another podcast member, and I'm not going to call his name, with another pro that claimed that Bill Taylor allowed a certain angler to get by with stuff, and that angler benefited from it. But I want to make sure I'll not call who that was. It really ticked me off at first, but I got over it because I'm a lot better individual than that person that accused and used my name on a podcast that I did let an angler by was cheating. And I certainly ever, I go to my deathbed knowing that I followed up with every lead, and I did it intelligently and fairly and as swiftly as I could. Now, the only difference in the way Bill Taylor and Kathy Fennell did back in the old days and Charlie Evans, we didn't tell everything that we found out and disqualified and banned people for. And whether that's the right way to do it, I thought it was at the time. I think I've changed my attitude on that a little bit because of social media. If someone is guilty of doing an intentional rules violation, then that person needs to be handled very strictly and deserving of punishment of a disqualification for up to a year or 2 years or even 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got some guys in the sport for sure that I think if you intentionally break a rule, I really believe this, and you've listened to the show, but I think if you intentionally break a rule, and I'm not talking about the life jacket rule or anything like that. But if you snag a fish on bed, or if you, just blatantly, if it's a no information rule and if there's a screenshot of you asking someone for information and you're not supposed to get, that kind of stuff, that's blatant to me. And I just think that there's just no place in that, because we do have to self-police to a certain degree in professional fishing, and that's what definitely puts the tournament directors like yourself in the past in a tough spot when people walk those lines. But I think when you blatantly do it, man, that's just, I don't know. I don't have any respect for folks that blatantly cheat.
Well, I don't either. And to be honest with you, I do want to add that self-reporting an incident has a lot of weight in my book.
Yes.
As a hey, I made a mistake. I should have told you.
I agree.
I'm sorry I did this or I did that. That goes a long way with me. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do was, I always said during a polygraph, if I had a bad situation, I'd say, you come clean, I disqualify you for this event, and we move forward. If you fail this polygraph test, you try to hide something, you're banned. I'll do it. I won't let you fish with us again. You'll never fish the sport again. And unfortunately, I had to ban a couple, and like that. And so, as I said earlier, every penalty and every deal you have to treat fairly and enforce in a consistent manner. And I think I've done that. I think that Triff Weldon did that, and I think that the people that's in charge right now, to a certain extent, would agree with that 100%. I like someone that'll come forward and say, I messed up. I should have done this. I didn't. This is what I did. But if somebody blatantly says, no, I didn't do that, fails a polygraph test, he needs to be handled.
I agree.
In accordance with that. That's just my opinion. I'm a tournament organizer.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of respect for all the groups out there. I'm impressed with the Major League Fishing team out there. They've got a tough area to, be involved in right now.
No doubt.
There's no doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
And I hope and pray that both organizations can succeed. I want to see bass fishing when I die better than it is today, and better than it is in my own grandkids' time. So, and my nephew that I mentioned earlier, I want it to be good for everybody.
I do too. And Bill, I've been opinionated about MLF obviously that's something that I've talked about a lot, and I talk about the whole sport. But I think sometimes people are, man, you want it to go out of business, or you want to do this and you want to do that, and that's simply not true for me either. I want it to succeed. I want it to succeed for the health of the sport. I want it to succeed for my kids that love to fish, for my past was involved with that organization. All the great people, the Kathy Fennells of the world that are there within that organization. I want to see that thing. I want to see that thing go. And I just think that again, once the dust settles, changes will be made, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So hopefully, I hope we leave bass fishing better than we found it, though.
Well, as I said, there's a lot of good business people in this sport. A lot of great people in this sport, people that know how to fish, people that are just good business people. I've never met the Anderson people other than just a time or two. I know Boyd well. I think he's a great angler. I think he's a great businessman. I know Kathy Fennell. I think she's got the biggest heart of anybody I know.
She does.
And I want the anglers to succeed.
Yes.
They're in a tough spot sometimes, and the sponsor dollars are not where they used to be. But I want to say this. Guys are talking about cutting back. With the number of anglers that's going to move up to the Bass Pro Tour, but a company has to do business in order for them to make money. If they don't make money, those anglers are not going to have a sport or a place to
a
fish.
Platform, yeah.
They need that platform out there, and I think there's room for it. You just have to suck it up and say, look, hey, I'm sorry. This year they're only going to take X number of anglers, and if you don't make it, I'm sorry. I mean, once you wear out, I'm an old basketball player. Going in my senior year, I knew that this is my last season. I'm not going to get sit down on the bench. I'm going to make it. I want to go to college and play ball. And a lot of guys got the same attitude. They don't want to work for it, and they don't make it. They can't fuss about it. If you're not keeping score, it makes one difference. But when you're keeping score and every fish counts, you got to earn your right to move forward and stay in that spot.
It's going to be a wild year. The next couple years, that's for sure. Going to be a lot of pressure on some boys. That's for sure. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, they're going to get my support one way or the other.
For sure.
I support you pros and what people in this sport do because I love it. I've made many, many friends in this sport. And I hope when I die, they can say, hey, there's old Bill Taylor, man, old country boy. He made it good at fishing, even though he couldn't catch the fish. He loved
I know better.
What he needed to do.
Well, here's if I hope it's forever. When that day comes, I hope it's a very, 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 very long time. But I'll stand there and say, hey, listen, he could catch him, and he caught him on that old boozer bug. I'll sit there and say it.
I tell you what, I owe a lot to Zorro Bait Company, and Stan Sloan started that company because I have won I'm not going to, I'm afraid the IRS come after me, but I've won substantial numbers of dollars fishing with the Zorro Boozer Bug.
Yes, you
Proud
have.
of. Hey, Larry Nixon buys them and uses them. And pays for them.
I know it's.
Hey, listen, I really appreciate the
Thank you, buddy.
Luke. Keep up the work. Good luck in your new venture. I know you're changed jobs a little bit, and that's okay.
A little life change, but all is well, my friend. All is well. I appreciate the kind words.
But I want to say a special thanks to all the people at Major League Fishing, right on down the ladder, Boyd and his team. And I want to thank Bassmasters for always having a professional organization. And then I also want to thank the other pro circuit out there, the National Pro Circuit League. And those guys, they're going to be out there trying to get these anglers, and hopefully everything works out. And I think you work for one of them.
I work for one of them. Yeah, we go.
I wish you guys the best.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
That.
I appreciate you, Bill. I appreciate you always being in my corner, and I appreciate you coming on LBL. I really, really enjoyed this.
All right, man. Well,
thank you, buddy.
And good luck out there.
Thank you, sir. Bill Taylor, everybody, right there. Literally a legend in the sport of fishing, an encyclopedia. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Man, some of those stories just get me. And listen, I have had the pleasure to travel around with Bill, whether it's on the tour or working events, and just sit in a room or go to dinner and hear these stories at length and over the years. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. And at 76 years old, just so lucky to have that guy on this show this week. I hope y'all enjoyed that. Man, that was awesome. That was awesome. I thanks to Bill for coming on. He's one of a kind, and I greatly appreciate him coming on. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in every single week. You bunch of low-lifers. Means the world. Lots of things to come this year, I promise you. Whew, we've got some announcements to make before the spring's over with. Life's crazy. Buckle up. It's going to get even crazier. We'll take you out with some Biloxi Blues, and I will see y'all. Stay warm. Try not to freeze, and I'll see y'all next week. See ya.
I never could make it last. Spanish moss, a Civil War ghost. Well, I'm gonna leave them in the past. Any direction, Lord, I'll be fine. It don't matter, east or west. North, south, wherever the wind blows, I'm leaving those burdens at rest. This highway, it does not know my name, and I don't care, no, I don't care. Heading my way for another place, and I got 3 good tires and a spare. Just a white line gypsy getting out of Mississippi with just enough gas to get